Am I the a-hole for telling my stepdad it was never a competition when he asked why I chose to have just my dad walk me down the aisle? My parents divorced when I was 4. I was their youngest child at that point. My brother was 10 and my sister was 8. And 2 years later, our mom remarried. I believe my stepdad thought he would inherit at least one child to call his own out of the marriage, as my siblings were older and not too happy about our stepdad. Something about him they simply didn't like. With me, I had no issue with him going in, but he made everything such a competition. He wanted to do everything my dad did. Would ask to go instead of my dad to certain dad things, Father's Day events, father-kid sports stuff, etc. And when I said no, he would tell me I was hurting his feelings. My dad was bothered by the whole going instead of stuff, so he offered for him to come with us a time or two. But that promptly stopped when he tried to take my dad's place at some of those events. When I was 12, my mom was in the UK for a work thing, and I was at my dad's the whole time. I ended up getting sick, and my stepdad showed up a few hours in when my mom had contacted him after dad contacted her, and he tried to tell my dad to leave so he could take over. I begged dad not to go and said I needed him, and the hurt my stepdad expressed to me/us was so deep. My dad told him not to put his feelings on me, and stepdad said I was big enough to understand that rejecting him as a dad hurt. It almost kicked off, but my dad just asked a nurse to remove my stepdad. Then he showed up 2 days later when I was still in the hospital and asked me if I would go to his and my mom's for him to take care of me. I said I didn't want to, and again he expressed I was breaking his heart, and why did I always choose my dad over him as he was my dad too. I told my mom about it, but she said it was a blessing to have 2 dads, and I should treat him more as a dad than as a step because he was trying his hardest. When I was 14, she really emphasized that with me, because they had suffered 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth, and she was no longer able to have kids after it. She said he only ever wanted to be a dad, and that he had always loved me, and it would be good for him to be loved back just as hard. Afterward, it was too much. I chose to live with my dad and just visit my mom and stepdad. And now it's been several more years. I'm 26, and he still tries to compete. He asked me directly the other night why I chose to ask my dad to walk me down the aisle at my wedding, getting married this November. And I told him because he's my dad. He started to interrupt, but I cut him off and told him to stop. That it was never a competition between them because my dad has always been and always will be my dad, and he was never going to win against him. He lost it and told me it was obviously a competition because he never got treated the same or loved the same. And it's a slap in the face because he is just as much my dad as my bi dad is. My mom is pissed at how I spoke to him too. Am I the a-hole? I touched on it in the post, but my dad on occasion did try to include stepdad in some stuff. He never came. And then it stopped when stepdad tried to push dad out of stuff so he could do it alone. Always Father's Day stuff too, or stuff relating to father-kid things. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I'm a stepmom. I would never insist that any of my stepkids put me in a role they weren't comfortable with. They started referring to me in mom titles way before I did. Your dad is your dad. People who tried to take that over/guilt you for not denying that, especially when you had a fully present dad in your life, are terrible, and this is 100% on them. All the miscarriage shaming? Gross. All the telling you that you needed to treat this person who wasn't your dad like he was your dad? Gross. He doesn't get to take over for your bio dad because he doesn't have bio kids of his own. It makes me sad because the step-parent/step-kid relationship can be great, meaningful and funny and heartfelt and frustrating and everything else all at once. But it can be that without trying to equate yourself to a parent. You aren't. Not a a-hole. He is being ridiculous, and your mother should have told him to wind his neck years ago. I often wonder if my mom hoped all 3 of us would fall in love with him and call him dad and choose to be a family with them over our dad. That might sound like I'm a really suspicious person, but she never took what I said about it seriously and always tried to encourage I see him as a dad. And I know she fought my siblings on their perceptions of him from the beginning. Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my stepfather when he suggested that he could walk me down the aisle? So 2 weeks ago, I, 25 female, got married to my husband, 26 male. When I was 6 years old, my mom and dad got divorced. 3 years later, my mom met and married Fred, who who had basically been my surrogate dad for all these years because my biological one hasn't been a huge part of my life. And Fred's kids, 20 male, 18 female, and 16 male, are basically my siblings. On last minute, my boy dad decided he didn't want to come to my wedding and walk me down the aisle. I got a call while I was getting my makeup done, and I was devastated, needless to say. Fred was in the room with me, and he started comforting me, telling me it would all be okay. And he said, "If you want, I can walk you down." That just rubbed me wrong, and I was already a mess emotionally. Fred knew how much I wanted my boy dad to walk me down the aisle, and he just suggested it like it didn't matter at all, like I hadn't just gotten my heart broken. So I just snapped and told him he was selfish, and told him to get out. Fred left, and one of my uncles ended up walking me down the aisle. My mom only heard about mine and Fred's fights after the wedding, and she's now pissed off at me, telling me that I overreacted, and that I needed to apologize to Fred, even though I was just frustrated and he had suggested something totally out of the left field. My mom told me that I was the selfish one apparently, and apparently I'm ungrateful. But I feel like his suggestion was completely wrong, and that I don't need to apologize. But I don't want to make things worse by not apologizing if I did do something wrong. So am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You just said 1, your boy dad wasn't involved in your life. 2, your stepdad was your dad growing up. And 3, your stepdad didn't impose himself at all until your boy dad flat out rejected your request. Your stepdad was trying to be supportive and you rejected him. If he hadn't offered, would you have been happier? Stop projecting your anger at your boy dad at your stepdad. Yes, she got her hopes up about her boy dad and was let down again. She's the a-hole for reacting the way she did, taking her anger out on him, when it should have been directed at boy dad. I hate posts like this because it seems like the child at the post isn't seeing past the nose on their face. Opie's boy dad has been doing this and will continue to do this throughout her life. The sad thing is, she doesn't realize it won't stop with the wedding just like it didn't stop when she was a little girl. It will continue over and over again throughout her life, until she either A, goes no contact with him, or B, one of them passes on. The problem Opie doesn't see is that Fred is a human being with feelings as well. Opie snapping at him for only trying to help? Seems to me not the first or the last time she dumped on him when her boy dad left her high and dry. Eventually, Fred will stop playing the role of supportive dad and simply take himself out of the relationship, as there's only so much a person can take. From what I read, Opie's mom and stepdad had a conversation, and it seems like Fred has been snapped at one too many times. He was mature and didn't respond in the moment. My guess is that he talked to Opie's mom and was like, "That's it, I'm done trying. Every time I tried makeup for boy dad, I get yelled at and snapped at. So I'm not going to anymore. Opie, you need to apologize. You need to acknowledge everything Fred has done for you. You need to realize he never had to do those things. And you need to respect the man who stepped in when your own dad stepped out. And go no contact with your dad, or you're going to continue to be in the world of heartache." Yep. Opie will forever remember her wedding day as the day she lost 2 dads. Opie does not seem to be quite that self-aware. After all, she lives in a world where it's possible she's not the a-hole. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my future sister-in-law I am done discussing my parents not giving her money for her wedding? I am getting married next May, and my brother and his fiancée are getting married that August. My brother and I grew up very privileged, and our parents offered to pay for both of our weddings and lay out what they were willing to pay. I don't like getting into money, but it was extremely generous. I come from a big Cuban family with few boundaries, and everyone is in everyone's business, and I love it. So my brother and I both understood there would be some strings attached, and my mom would want to be heavily involved. I said yes, and my brother said he had to talk to his fiancée, Claire. Claire was not alright with my parents having a say in the wedding, and didn't want to set the precedent that my mom is going to have control over their lives. I totally respect her decision. She's a very independent, lone wolf type, and honestly, that is a personality I can't understand, but I don't judge. Claire and I get along great, and are both going to be bridesmaids in each other's weddings. As we began planning, Claire began to express frustration over planning a budget wedding, and I sympathized. Then she became obsessive about the topic of my parents and how they suck for not just giving us the money outright, and that my mom's a controlling witch. This really upset me, and we got into a fight, and then talking about how she hates our family and how everyone is enmeshed. I asked her to stop a couple of times. The American lifestyle with a big focus on independence has zero appeal to me, but I've never criticized anyone and keep my opinion to myself. Recently, we were hanging out with my oldest brother and sister-in-law. Parents paid for their wedding too. And my older brother said something about how he broke up with an ex once before his marriage, because she wasn't okay with the idea of multi-generation living together, and he would never marry someone who wouldn't let my parents move in someday. Claire got upset, don't really understand why, and started ranting about how my parents are entitled, how they won't give her money and ruin her wedding, and how me and my fiancé are cowards for taking their money. My older brother screamed at her and called her a bunch of names, which I don't think was right, and banned her from his house, but he is kind of a hothead. He then told my mom, and now my mom is threatening not to come. I don't want to be that extreme, but I sent Claire a text that I am 100% done talking about wedding budgets or my parents, and if she brings it up again, I will walk out. And if it keeps happening, I will drop out of her wedding. Claire now feels I'm not supporting her and being a bad bridesmaid. She said I'm being really selfish and invalidating her feelings. Now my brother is mad and feels I should try to help her navigate because I am normally the chill one in the family, but I'm sick of listening to it. Now for the comments. Not the a-hole, but you're pretty much the only one here who isn't. Claire needs to accept she can either have the money or total freedom to plan the event, but not both. Your older brother needs to not throw gas on the fire by tossing in his opinions about what relationships between married couples and the in-laws should look like. Maybe it was coincidence, but I have my doubts. And the groom-to-be needs to get clear on where he stands in all this, instead of looking to you to solve the problem for him. Agreed, but I don't think the parents are a-holes either. They clearly respected Claire's decision to not accept wedding funds. And now Claire is demonizing their entire family. Yep, I'm puzzled how Claire feels the parents are entitled. Their money, their culture. Deal with it. The parents respected her choice of control versus cash, and now she's angry? The only one who seems entitled in all this is Claire. Not the a-hole. I empathize with Claire's independence, as she drew many lines I would have drawn myself. I don't like people in my business, and would not live under the presumption that people could pop in/move in anytime they want. That being said, I live within my own means, and I don't accept anything from anyone that comes with clear strings. She is not entitled to your family's money, and she double does not get to disrespect your parents. Your brother might be a hothead, but I don't think he was entirely wrong for blowing up in this situation. I put independence in quotes because I don't think she's trying to be independent, so much as she's trying to have her cake and eat it too. Yep, don't try to have any say in what I do. I'm independent. But give me your money. Not the a-hole. Your parents can put whatever conditions they want on that money, because it's their money. Claire needs to either get with it or get over it. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my grandpa to walk me down the aisle over my mom's husband? My dad died when I was 12. My parents were long since divorced, and my mom introduced me to her husband 2 days after my 13th birthday and married him 5 months later. I think my mom's husband was hoping I would see him as another parent and dad figure. But because of my age, I always saw him as my mom's husband. We get along fine, but he was never someone I looked to for dad stuff. That fell to my grandpa, my dad's dad. Even before my dad died, I was around my paternal grandparents a lot, and I looked to my grandpa as another dad figure. So when he got engaged last year, I asked my grandfather if he would walk me down the aisle. Not because I wanted something super traditional, but I was always a daddy's girl, and he was my favorite person when I was a kid, so he would have been by my side regardless. My fiancé and I decided we would walk together with one parent each beside us. So I chose my grandfather in place of my dad, and my fiancé chose his mom. I didn't really say anything because I didn't think I needed to. But when my mom's husband asked who was walking me and I told him my grandpa, he got really quiet for like an hour and then asked me why I chose my grandpa over him. My mom was there at that point and asked why I would ask a grandparent over a parent. I said I wanted my grandpa there to represent my dad, and because we had a very close, very important relationship. I said my mom and her husband would be walking together during the wedding. They said it wasn't enough, and that he should have been asked first as the true father figure. I told them my grandpa was more of a father figure to me and had a more influential role in my life, and that I was sorry if feelings were hurt, but my grandpa was who I wanted there. My mom's husband said I should have considered him more, and at least just walk with my fiancé if I wouldn't even ask him to be by my side. My mom told me she was disappointed in me, that it's not what my dad would have wanted. I told her I think this is exactly what my dad would have wanted, which she couldn't argue back with. It's been a while, and there's still tension there. Am I the a-hole? Not an a-hole. You are right, they are wrong. This one isn't complicated. Your day, so your way, not an a-hole. You also explained your choice in a reasonable way. I can understand why your mom's husband might feel disappointed, but that does not give him, or anyone else, the right to call on you on your choice. Not an a-hole. Good luck. Not an a-hole. Your wedding, your choice. Your stepfather is making your wedding about him at his hurt feelings. He was your mother's choice, not yours, and you are much closer to your paternal grandfather. Your stepfather is allowed to have his feelings on the issue, but that's where it ends. Him telling you that you should have considered him more and just walk with your fiancé crosses the line. You're doing what feels natural and best for you. Now your mother and stepfather need to respect your decision. You have done nothing wrong here. It's fine for him to ask, and fine for him to hope, and even fine for him to be disappointed. But by asking more questions, he is only going to hurt himself, since there's no non-hurtful answer of why you like someone else better than him. A lesson most of us learned in middle school. Not an a-hole. I really don't get all these step-parents who try to push their own agendas on unwilling stepchildren. Being treated with civility and respect is all you can demand, really. But then, if step-parents all behaved, we wouldn't have AITA.